So, Jeremy, First Liberty sent a demand letter to Hulu after the platform reportedly rejected a church's ad 2 times. Take us through what happened with that rejection in the ad.
Yeah, Hulu, which is owned and operated by Disney, of course, has a bunch of ads that they allow people to put on the platform if you're an approved advertiser, I guess. And the pastor for Hulen Street Church, I know that sounds a lot like Hulu, but it's a different name. Hulen Street Church advertised their services on Thursdays. They decided to open up a new service time for people that aren't able to get to Sunday services, and they wanted to advertise that locally like they've done in a lot of other places. And so they became an approved advertiser. They submitted their ad and it was rejected. They submitted it again and it was rejected again. And this time they asked for a response, and the response came back that their ad, which was a 22-second ad that just simply said, hey, you can't come to church on Sunday? No problem. We understand. Why don't you come on Thursday? Here's the time and the location, and we hope to see you there. That was it. 22 seconds, that was over with. But Hulu came back and said that advertisement violated their guidelines because it engaged in religious indoctrination. And so that's why they lost their ad. They couldn't post their ad because it engaged in religious indoctrination. Apparently, just telling people that you have a church service available to them at a certain time and day of the week is religious indoctrination to the people at Hulu.
Yeah, it's interesting because every ideology that is spread is a form of indoctrination, let's say. We could throw that word out for anything. I mean, there are plenty of things that Hulu, probably allows in other ads that they would have to consider indoctrination based on that same standard, I would imagine. But that term religious indoctrination, is that present anywhere in their advertising terms? Is this something that they've used, that we've seen at least publicly being used in similar cases in the past?
It's nowhere in their guidelines, their advertising guidelines at all. And so the public is without any kind of ability to gauge whether or not their ad would constitute religious indoctrination or would be rejected for religious indoctrination, because the Hulu company has not said that that's what they're looking for. But even laying that aside for the moment, can anyone with a straight face really say that to name the time, place, and location of a church service would constitute religious indoctrination? If that's the case, then we need to look at what Hulu is doing with other advertisements as well. For instance, Hulu advertises many online gambling opportunities. They advertise for alcohol sales, and they advertise for any number of things that there are a lot of people that would have some objections to, but just sort of look away while the advertisement goes through. Are those things secular indoctrination? Are they some level of indoctrinating just because they're an ad? I really don't. I don't know. I don't think so. Certainly, just telling people the who, what, where, and when of a church service, that hardly arises to the issue of religious indoctrination. But even if it did, at least do us the favor, Hulu, of telling us that you're going to reject those ads before we submit them.
So, and just to clarify, and you've said this, but this is basically this 22-second ad. There's nothing in there that would be objectionable. It's just a pastor of a church sharing the details on this Thursday service. I mean, that's essentially what's in this ad.
Yeah, you can go to firstliberty.org and read the ad, or you find it on YouTube and watch it. I mean, it's only 22 seconds, and it basically says, hey, I'm the pastor, and I understand that a lot of people aren't able to get to church on Sundays because you got a job or whatever it might be. Well, why don't you come to church on Thursday instead? We meet on Thursdays at this time, at this location. We'd love to have you there. I mean, that's it. That's hardly religious indoctrination. And even if it were, at least put those words in the policy so that pastors like Wes Hamilton will know, oh, I better not submit my ad to Hulu.
Yeah, but it is, you raised an interesting point about gambling and alcohol. Is it alcohol indoctrination, gambling indoctrination? I mean, all of these things are advertising something that some people find objectionable or wrong or would have an issue with. Why do you think, and you've looked at a million of these cases, you've worked on them over the years, why is religion and faith almost always and exclusively treated differently in these circumstances than any of the other issues that would have the same impact that people might disagree over?
I don't know if it goes back to that age-old requirement that you don't talk in polite society about politics and religion. And maybe that's where it all stems from. It's this sort of antiquated Victorian notion that we don't talk about these things in polite society. Maybe that's where it stems from. I don't know. But look, here's what we're asking for. And it's interesting that we're having this discussion just after the Supreme Court has heard arguments in 2 cases out of Florida and Texas, where those legislatures in those states are trying to provide some sort of restraint from social media companies, big tech companies like Hulu, from engaging in viewpoint discrimination on their platforms. And basically what those states are saying is, look, tell us what your policies are and apply them fairly. It's really just the two requirements. Well, here we have the perfect example for why those are very important laws. Hulu did not tell us what their policies are. They just simply announced them ex post facto or as they wanted to apply them. And they are not applying them clearly very fairly because there are other, quote, indoctrinating type of advertisements that are allowed on the platform. So look, if Hulu wants to discriminate against religious speech, it's a private company. I suppose it can do that, but at least do everybody the favor of telling everybody what you are going to do. Because if you don't have those standards in place, what happens is that individual actors are then set free to have broad discretion to decide, I like this speech, but I don't like that speech. And what Hulu is going to find out is that there's a whole bunch of people inside their own company that are reviewing these advertisements that are rejecting certain ads that others would have allowed, and allowing other ads that some would have rejected. And so there's no uniform standard even for Hulu to abide by, and certainly for their viewers to understand this is the product I'm going to receive when I come to experience this medium. And so it's an important element for them to just simply say, here's what our standards are, and then go about applying them fairly. That's worked really well for us in the United States of America under the First Amendment. It certainly seems like it would work well for these private big tech companies around the country.
Well, you just spoke to this. So I'm gonna ask the question still because you said what you said, and I think you'll have a good response to this. But what do you say to those people who would say, "Well, look, you guys want the baker and the photographer to be able to opt out of same-sex weddings. Can't Hulu opt out of religion if they choose to?" As you were saying, if they choose to say, "Well, you know what, we're going to allow the gambling and the alcohol, but when it comes to religion, we don't want you advertising a church service." In your view, should that be an okay legal position for them to take?
Well, I think it would be a dumb business move for them to take, but it would certainly be an allowable legal move for them to make. Again, all we're looking for is some basic honesty and some upfrontness with the organization. If Hulu wants to say no religious people, no religious advertisements, hey, Mark Wahlberg, don't you come onto this platform advertising Halo, they can certainly do so. They're a private company, but at least have the guts to tell everybody that we don't want those religious people advertising on our platform. But if you don't state that up front, then don't at all be surprised when people are upset and claim that you're engaging in viewpoint discrimination and censorship when you reject simple ads like where you can go to church on a Thursday night in Fort Worth, Texas. Again, have the standards, whatever that standard might be. At least the pastor would know, oh, that's the platform I can advertise on. Ironically, I'm going to go to Google and Facebook and Instagram to apply them without a problem. But Hulu is the place where I can advertise them because they, amongst all the big tech companies, apparently don't want religion on their platform. It at least lends to the assumption that Hulu does not want religious speech on their platform. They've not explained why that would be, and perhaps we're not entitled to that explanation, but we are at least entitled to know what the rules are so that we can follow them as advertisers ourselves.
So the demand letter, which again, I think you just hinted at obviously what is in that letter, people can read it, but tell us what is in the demand letter and what happens if Hulu doesn't respond to First Liberty?
Well, it's very simple. What we've asked for is just simply for them to change course. They've changed course on advertisements in the past, and these mistakes happen from time to time, I suppose. And while they're trying to figure out their standards and how to adjust under these new laws in Texas and Florida, if they have to, then this is one more element for them to help learn how to do this. And so we hope that they'll just simply reverse the decision and allow these advertisements to go forward so that people in Fort Worth, Texas would be able to find out where they can go to church on Thursday night. So what happens if they don't do that? Well, a lot of that hangs on, I think, what happens in the Supreme Court with the net choice cases that are before the court right now. Will those laws be enforceable? Obviously, the church is in Fort Worth, Texas. HB 20, which is under consideration right now in one of the cases at the Supreme Court, would very much apply to this situation and could have some penalties for Hulu if they are found to have violated that law. And so we'll take a bit of a wait and see approach to this whole thing, but I don't think we should have to wait. If Hulu doesn't want religious advertisements, then tell everybody that that's the case. Otherwise, reverse your decision that some rogue advertising reviewer made for you, not applying your own policy or even applying it fairly, and allow this advertisement to go forward on your platform.
Well, Jeremy, as always, we appreciate you breaking it all down. We'll stay on this case, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it with you again very soon. Appreciate your time.
Sounds great, Billy. Thanks for having me.